All right, excellent. It is 12:03 and my name is Patty Richards and I'm calling to order the Vermont Community Broadband Board meeting. This is our regular, it is our regular scheduled meeting. We've just moved the date around a little bit. It is June 2nd, 2025. And again, at 12:03, we're kicking off the meeting. We have 4 board members in person and thank you everybody for attending today in person that's here. I'll do a roll call. We have Brian, Dan, Sarah, and myself. Laura is not on yet. Expect her virtually. And Christine, I'll let you do a roll call of staff.
Yep, with staff present here today, we have Rob Fish, Geneva Boyd, Lucy Fortier, Tony Clitheroe, Jose Agallo, JB Ledoux, sorry, Christina Sweet, and Eugene Lee. And online, we have Heron Herzog, Alexi Montserrat, and Brittany Watson.
Excellent. It was nice to meet Jose in person for the first time. I had to introduce myself, not who he was, like, hello in person. Okay, first item on our agenda for action is number 2, meeting minute approval. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes, and I'm going to make a motion that we approve the April 21st, 2025 meeting minutes. We'll do these one at a time. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. I'm going to give it to Dan. Sarah, you'll get the next one. Any discussion of the meeting minutes? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes provided in our packet as provided, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes carry 4-0. We have another set of minutes for May 12th, 2025. I'll make a motion to approve those. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sarah's got that one. Any discussion of those meeting minutes? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry 4-0. Next on our agenda is item 3, public comment. Christine, I'll turn that over to you. Oh, see Laura has just joined. Hi, Laura. We're just on to public comment. We just approved meeting minutes and then we're on to public comment.
Okay, so I will open the floor and the virtual online for a public comment. Online, please raise your hand if you'd like to make a statement. Anybody in the room, please raise your hand as well. Recognize you in the order that your hand is raised, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Anybody like to say anything?
Steve?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm Stephen John from BB Fiber. I just want to tell you how happy I am to be here and see you all.
Excellent.
It's
Ditto.
really a breath of fresh air for, a lot of us, who can hold up for a while. So, thanks so much. Appreciate the work of the board. It's all just best wishes.
Thank you for that.
And no rain today.
Exactly.
It's not the weekend.
Any other persons want to make comment? Okay, hearing none and seeing none, we can go to the next agenda item.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. Just to remind everybody, we do have a closing public comment. So if there's any burning issues that come up, you have another opportunity to speak up. Number 4 on our agenda is a BEAD update.
Yep, and I'll turn this over to Alexi, who's online. Go ahead, Alexi.
Hi all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Dan.
Great. Sorry I couldn't be there with you in person today. It's been a little bit since I've seen some of you. But so just a brief update on the program. I think, as a recap, we've been waiting for a new policy notice from the NTIA based on the Trump administration's review of the program and some decisions about what they might do. We still do not have that. It had initially been promised in mid-May. They are currently now saying by June. We don't know exactly what that means. There is some talk of maybe that will be earlier in the month than later in the month, but we still don't know. In the meantime, we are moving forward. We continue to review the applications for what's known as the gating process to make sure that all of the applicants that we have the managerial and technical capabilities to carry out a program. We're pretty well on our way through that process. Several groups have what's called curing information. So there are elements of the applications that we have had questions about or we want some more information. So there's a back and forth that happens much the same way that VCBB worked with NTIA during the process of developing our volumes 1 and 2. So that's where we are right now. We are not going to do any scoring of any applications right now. Recall that any applications that are not competitive, meaning only one applicant, we only had one applicant per project area. We don't have to score those, so there is some forward motion we are able to have with those, but any that are competitive, then we need to score the applications. We've been advised that since the policy notice is very likely to have an impact on what our current scoring is, that we would do best just to wait for that notice before we take any action on scoring any items. But we are trying to position ourselves so that we are ready to go as quickly as possible once that guidance has been issued. And, you know, as always, we continue to communicate with NTIA and our other states' broadband offices about what's happening, what we can do, how folks are handling things. So that's about where we're at right now, and hopefully we'll have something to report sooner than later.
Alexei, quick question on, if you have one applicant in an area, you said you don't score that because there's only one applicant. Is there a way to do some sort of test to assure that the applicant is solid, basically can deliver the goods?
Yeah,
So
so I would distinguish between the two processes, one being gating, one being scoring. So
Okay.
the gating process is that set of issues around managerial capability, financial capability, technical capability, where our volume 2 and the B rules require that they submit a fairly hefty amount of information that we then evaluate for all of those factors. The scoring phase is then when we look at what does the actual project look like, is that cost competitive, and the other elements of our scoring that then come into that to choose a winner if it's in a competitive place. But so we always do that first part just to make sure financial, managerial, and technical health is there.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And if somebody is a sole applicant, and again, you're not going through the scoring process, but you've done the gating process. If their proposal, let's say it's really expensive compared to others, is there a way to negotiate with them?
So that then the negotiation phase, once we've gotten through that gating and made sure the applicant themselves is someone we can work with, then yes, we then turn to the content of the proposal itself and start working through those issues around the cost, what the types of technology are, whether it makes sense to change anything in any way to reduce costs or increase fiber deployment, or any of the issues that we are trying to make happen.
Excellent. That's very helpful. Thank you. Any other questions for Alexei? All right, hearing none, I think we're all set.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that brings us to item 5 on our agenda, which is the 8 million in ARPA interest. I'll let you tee it up.
Yes, and this is something that I wanted to discuss with the board in executive session. Based on attorney-client privilege, and then when the board comes out, we could certainly go over whatever the board decides.
Yep, and we'd like to include staff in the discussion, and we'll, not sure. Ginny, do you have a way to keep Alexei into a subject?
Yeah, I'll sign him to a room.
And then the rest of you will ask to step outside.
If you wouldn't mind, just for a few minutes.
How about I move that we go into?
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
to.
so I'm gonna make. a
Excuse
motion.
me, Madam Chair,
Yes, Laura?
clarification in terms of staff, are we bringing in our lobbyist?
Is the lobbyist?
Yeah, I think a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah, she's welcome to attend if she's online.
Yep.
Not in the room, right? I'm not missing
Nope,
somebody.
she's online. I see her.
I'm here.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion that the board and the additional attendee staff that have been noted and our lobbyist join the executive session. Make a motion to move into executive session pursuant to one VSA section 313A1F, which is confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry 5-0. So we will now move to executive session.
Oh, I did this. And I put it up there. And I'm out.
Rob, this is maybe a question for you. Can Tony share? Okay, so do you want me to share it? Does somebody
Share.
else? Okay.
You to share.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. All right, we are back in public session and the board has been in executive session deliberating with legal counsel strategy. So that's what moved us into executive session, what to do with the interest earnings that have accrued relative to remind me where the interest earnings come from.
ARPA.
Relative to ARPA funds that have been sitting in an account, they've accrued interest. After a significant discussion with board and staff, we are moved to pass or take action on this resolution. I'm going to make a motion that we approve this resolution that's up on the screen. I'm going to read it. That the Vermont Community Broadband Board make a motion to supplement our July 29th, 2024 match funding program for federal broadband grants. Whereas the Vermont Community Broadband Board approved a program to provide match for a federal broadband grants to qualified eligible providers as set forth in the broadband resolution dated July 29, 2024, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein, referred to as the match program. And whereas since that time, the Department of Public Service and the Department of Finance and Management have executed an excess receipts form providing budget spending authority to VCBB with respect to approximately 8.2 million in interest earnings on American Rescue Plan Act 2021 ARPA grant funds, which now total approximately 8.9 million, which is an additional funding. And whereas the additional funding is expressly to be used to support VCBB operations and VCBB's ARPA and broadband equity access and deployment speed broadband infrastructure program funds or grant programs. And whereas the staff have determined that applying the additional funding to the match program is an appropriate use of such funding and have recommended the board approve this use of the additional funding. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the board authorizes VCBB staff to issue grant agreements supplementing the allocations in accordance with the procedure outlined in the match program. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Dan seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
FX had raised this hand, but I guess that's not what
Not
you're
on the
supporting.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Laura is opposed. The resolution passes 4 in favor and 1 opposed. For the record, Laura voted 2 against it. Okay. All right, that is the conclusion of item 5. That brings us to item 6 on our agenda, which is the digital equity program update.
Yep, and Christina and Tony will be taking this one.
Great, let me just share the presentation here. Right, everyone, I believe, can see the presentation now. And so this is going to be just a brief overview of where we are since the termination of the Digital Equity Capacity Grant. I know that the board met quite recently on when we found out about that termination. So we don't need to go over that again, but we'll just let you know where we're at in our response and next steps. So to recap, the Digital Equity Capacity Grant was a $5.3 million grant that we received from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. It was part of the state Digital Equity Capacity Grant Program. So this was a program where all 50 states received grants up until the date of the termination. I believe 49 states had actually received their grants. 1 state was expecting to receive their grant in the coming days. And it was one of 3 Digital Equity Act grant programs established in the bipartisan infrastructure law of 2021. And the purpose was really to allow Vermont to implement its digital equity plan that was developed under the previous NTI grant for $518,000, and ultimately to empower individuals and communities with the tools and skills to benefit from access to affordable, reliable broadband. So this is a quote from the press release that announced our Digital Equity Capacity Grant from Christine. And I really think it's important to highlight that the digital divide is not just a technological gap, it's an economic divide that impacts our communities and families. So this grant would have really had a sweeping impact on Vermonters across the state. As you know, this grant was terminated at approximately 6 p.m. on Friday, May 9th. It was an immediate loss of our $5.3 million grant. And with it, the potential loss of an additional $5.3 million or more, because there was still funding in the Digital Equity Act program for this grant. And we were expecting to have another opportunity to apply for more funds, as were all the other states in the coming year. So all states with active grants, all 49 states received termination letters. The 1 state that did not, had not received their grant yet, has not heard anything since. So we know that they did not receive their grant. And Tony, as well as Christine, has been in contact with the Vermont Attorney General's office, the Vermont Congressional Delegation, as well as other states. So as you know, we had an emergency VCBB board meeting shortly after the grant was terminated, and we have since paused all digital equity capacity grant work. So that's all the work related to the implementation of our digital equity plan, including the work that we had begun with a contractor. So that work is also entirely paused, and we sent that contractor a notification that they would need to pause all of their work, and we could only reimburse them for work that was completed up through May 9th, the date that we received that termination letter. Tony will talk a little bit more about the legal options we're exploring. Karen has conducted some media work with public outreach and really highlighting the importance of bridging the digital divide and the benefit that this grant would have had on Vermonters. And we are in the process now of developing a contingency plan that would allow us to continue the work that is most relevant to Vermonters, that wouldn't be implementing our digital equity plan per se, but would continue to help people get connected and help them have the digital skills they need to actually benefit from affordable broadband internet access. And so I will pass it off to Tony at this point to discuss our legal options and our collaboration with local, statewide, and national entities.
Christina, real quick before we go to Tony, the contractor that we are stopping work with is,
RISD, Rural Innovation Strategies, Inc.
thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to request another very brief executive session, give you an update.
Same reference,
Yes.
same
Fine,
statute, okay. I'll make a motion that we moved into executive session pursuant to one VSA section 313A1F, which deals with confidential attorney-client communication, for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body. Is there a second? I'll second that. Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? You guys carry 4-0.
And the same people in the executive session
Yes.
minus Gwen.
Yes.
Okay. We don't remember right now. It's still strange and it's freaky. It's freaky.
Just like roll it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy girl over here.
Great job, Cheater.
Maybe the camera thing.
I think it's the camera.
It's working so hard to get me on.
Camera thing. I think it's making that creaking sound.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, is there anything else on item 6, the digital equity program update?
I just did want to give staff, everybody, a really kudos for that really wonderful memo of the impacts, because it really was helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Very detailed.
Very
It
detailed.
was a great run through. Ton of work went into that, obviously. Thank you all.
Just kind of stopping everything for 2 weeks. Unnecessary.
Okay, hopefully the AG is successful.
Yeah.
Okay, item 7, our agenda is budget update and proposed 2026 operating budget.
Great, I will take it away. Again, this is a pretty short presentation. We're just gonna cover fiscal year 2025 operating expenditures for Q3. So that was the quarter ending March 31st, 2025. Look at the fiscal year 2026 operating budget. That's essentially all of the VCBB costs except for grants and federal funding updates, and then a summary of our ARPA obligations. So this slide shows the VCBB cumulative FY 25 and Q3 expenditures. So this is, 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year. You can see personnel costs are at 71%, so we're right on track. Overall, costs are pretty steady. I think for this year, what you'll see in the FY 26 operating budget is that we did a better estimation of those costs that really fit into that miscellaneous cost category. So we won't likely be so high in miscellaneous costs next year in terms of our percent expended. But even with those overages, so to speak, in supplies and miscellaneous, our total costs are still on track. We did also spend quite a bit less so far this year in contractual costs. And that is due to many of our larger contracts being deliverables based. So we really we're not going to be paying for some of those, paying large amounts for within some of those contracts until we actually get those deliverables.
So then they'd be moved into another fiscal year. Is that what you're saying?
The contractual costs, yes.
Okay.
But I guess it's not, JB, you can maybe explain a little bit. So those costs, in this aren't, the contractual costs in the state budget are part of like a larger budget category that includes our grants and all of our expected federal funding. So we're not like committed to that 3.7 million number in any way. That's really just our estimate, or was our estimate last year of our high estimate of what we could expect to see in contractual costs this year. But the funding source for those costs don't change.
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well. And I
Thank
think that I'm not sure how that was gotten to last year, but I think that we definitely took a look and for the FY 26 and have a better grasp, I think, of what's
Yeah.
going to actually come due. And So we should be so much under budget.
Exactly. Any questions about our expenditures so far this fiscal year? And again, not, we're about 2 months later than this actual, these expenditures, which are everything up through March 31st.
Yeah, the only one for me that jumped out was the contractual
Yeah.
line item, but that was a good explanation.
All right, hearing none. We'll look at our FY 26 operating budget. So again, this is really all of these costs other than grants. Our personnel, costs are predicted to be slightly higher. That's pretty typical with personnel costs. Our board costs are actually estimated a little bit lower to track more closely with our board cost spend. Travel is pretty similar. Internal service fees, fairly similar. Those are the fees that we pay to the Department of Human Resources and the Agency of Digital Services, really the cost of doing business in the state government. Equipment and software and supplies are very similar. We did have a better estimate of those costs that are categorized as miscellaneous. Those are things like communication fees, dues, other equipment, this broad category of other purchase services, promotional materials, anything we're charged for rent or office space, and sponsorships. And then for contractual, again, this is just an estimate that's based on a subset of what it's in the state budget that includes both our contractual expenses and our planned grant expenses. But I went through our existing contracts and did an estimate or a high estimate of what we would expect to expend. So it's a little bit lower than last year. And we did include the indirect category, whereas we hadn't had this in previous years' operating budgets. And maybe I'll pass it off to JB to explain indirect.
Right, well, indirect are costs that are associated with the administration of the grants on the PSD side. They're charged to the grants by PSD based on personnel costs. And I'm not 100% sure why they weren't tracked previously in
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
this operating budget. That was a decision made by somebody before I held this position. And we thought it prudent to put them in there going forward.
Yeah, so the indirect costs are basically the costs that we pay to the Public Service Department for all of the support that they provide to us. And that brings us to a total estimated operating budget for FY 26 of $4.8 million.
Thank you. So, Christine, are you expecting action on this, or is this information that will come back to take an action on the budget, or help me with
Well,
next
yeah,
steps?
we'd like a resolution for you to approve the budget, but
So this is, you are seeking
Yeah.
a motion and action today?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 2026 budget as proposed for a total of 4.880493. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Sarah. Discussion.
I had one question,
Yes.
which is the other purchase services in miscellaneous. What would that be?
Here's some examples of those.
Yeah.
I understood all the other things you said,
Yeah.
Kristen, but that one I was like, what would that be?
Right, let me just. And it might not even be a category, I guess, used very often.
Yeah, it might just be,
Yeah.
that's like all the things that could go into that category. So
Right.
JB can check to see if we've actually had anything charged to that category in the last year.
It's going up.
Lucy, feel free to chime in if you know anything about the other purchase services category.
Purchase services.
Could it be computers?
We have a annual vision for the financial system of the state that's charged. We also have other services could be, as Kay mentioned, we do have some subscription-based services like Canva, those things so that, you know, any kind of thing of that nature. It could include also, I'm not 100% sure how we're doing that, but if we're doing some statewide contract purchasing of equipment, such as we did previously in last fiscal year, which was the projector,
Yeah.
or that kind of thing. The SBL, the owl,
Okay.
our favorite, the SBLN
Okay.
renewal, it's these kinds of things. And sometimes, Christine has a fee base to attend a conference, so that can be included as well.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think we've had anything in this past fiscal year.
I don't believe we had anything
There's, yeah,
of any nature so far, or they'll be coming up, but yeah.
there are dozens of those categories that we keep alive and keep
Just
in other categories just.
In case we need it. Laura, you have your hand up? We can't hear you. You want to call in like you did before?
She's asking, why are we not seeing revenue?
Oh, really?
We can definitely, so that hasn't been something that we had in the, as part of the, operating budget, but I can certainly show you where that lives in the overall VCBV budget, and, JB can help clarify that as well. I'm going to pull that up on my screen and then
I assume what Laura's referring to is the grant, the rundown of the grants that fund us.
yes.
So these are the expenses. How do we come up with paying for those, the grants coming in?
So I'm gonna, pull up what the budget.
So while you're doing that, I'll just continue to project what she's saying. She'd like to see projections for 2026 and reserve funds. We also have the USF revenue, which is significant.
Yes. I'm gonna stop.
Good questions, Laura.
There we go. So this is actually the budget as presented to the governor and as presented by the governor to the legislature. Is that a different question from Laura, or is that the same thing?
It's not like she wanted.
You can't see it right now.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, it will
Okay.
probably take a little while for it.
So this is our operating budget. And then the way it goes into the budget is actually pretty bare bones. There are essentially, the way it's presented in the budget is our USF fund, that's the Vermont Community Broadband here.
Is
And
there a
then
way
the
to make
federal-
that bigger?
Maybe not.
Yeah, plus.
So it's our Vermont Community Broadband Fund and the Federal Revenue Fund. So the state budget doesn't actually break it down into all of our federal grants. We certainly have a record of all of those federal grants, and
Is it not?
JB might have,
Oh, yeah.
JB might have like how it goes. So JB has how it goes into the system. I have here what the system puts out, so I can also let JB share the more,
Yeah, I think
the
there's.
better detail.
Is there, I think. Is there not another slide that breaks it down
Possibly.
in the? So the federal,
Mhm.
it's based on the incoming funding that we are expecting. The
Yeah.
reason that it's so large, as compared to last year was because that we accounted for $40 million worth of BEAD funding for fiscal year 26. And the rest, I believe,
Mhm.
was a combination of DE.
You know, if it's maybe it's federal receipts inventory, maybe?
Yeah, that could be it.
Let's find out.
Well, yes,
Nope.
okay.
Nope, it's still.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's
still-
still in one. Yeah.
JB
Yeah.
has the spreadsheets that actually
Maybe,
show it broken down.
maybe the sheet that shows the allocation by staff person, because that lists all the grants on it. I don't know. I don't know if there's a better
That's
one.
it, yeah,
No,
JB
I-
can show you
I
what,
don't, I think
Yeah.
all the information I have is in several spreadsheets. There's nothing as succinct as that, because I
Yeah.
wasn't ready for that question. But, when preparing the budget, there's not really much of a differentiation between the federal programs. It's just kind of lump sum like that. So I
Yeah.
can definitely have, something further prepared
Yeah, we
for the
can-
board or for.
Hey, we have time, so
Yeah,
we have time to take action on this at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Let's defer then. Any other?
So let me get the question, let's make sure we understand the question clearly. And so what I understand, and Laura, this is, you know, I'm trying to interpret what I heard through text. You're looking for a breakdown by grant source, where those funds are being expended? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, not where they're
Where they're
being
coming
expended.
so, yeah, and that makes sense, and we can definitely put that together. So that would be the federal revenue funds and the amount we would expect to spend in FY '26. That's what adds up to this 43.9 million, which includes grants and contractual costs.
And so the combination of the USF and the federal grants is what accounts for the operating budget.
Yeah.
But the personnel and other things are spread between the grants and the USF.
So what you can see here is that our expected revenue is up to 45.5 million, with 1.589 million being the USF fund and 43.9 million being our federal revenues. So that includes fees and our other federal grants.
So what we'll want to see is staff is proposing to the board a $4.88 million budget expense.
Mhm.
How will that get paid for? So BEAD is for pushing out to the CUDs. This list of expenses different. How are we going to pay for the 4.88?
Right. Right, that, I mean,
That's
Some of that will.
some of that will come from
different-
BEAD, and the budgets
Yeah.
established for each of the grants has allowances for most of the categories that you saw on that.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
All right, so you've got the questions. I'm gonna
Yeah.
rescind my motion so that's off the table.
okay.
Right, let me bring back the presentation here.
We're not gonna take action on 2026 budget.
Okay, so these are our federal funding updates. The U.S. Treasury approves adding the Affordable Long Dot Program to our capital project fund plan, which is great. So we can move forward with that program and are moving forward with that program. As Alexi mentioned, we expect NPA guidance by sometime this month. And we have paused all work, including contractual work, for the digital equity grant. Finally, our Northern Borders Regional Commission grants. We have two of those grants. Their first of them has recently been extended to September 30th. The second ends December 31st, 2025, but we are expecting to receive extensions on both of those grants.
Yes.
And finally, our ARPA.
Do you have any
summary.
fears of any of these different federal funding sources eating the same rat or karate chop that happened? Do you have any other concerns here?
The big concern is the BEAD program.
Yeah.
itself. Okay. None, we are not concerned about the others. The BEAD program. We are concerned about it.
So you're asking about the Northern Border Regional, or something like?
Any
that?
of these? Do you have any concerns that
No.
the Trump administration will pull them back and
They're shifting going forward, but at this point, these are grants from several years ago, so it's safe. Well,
hopefully,
considering, but
hopefully, okay.
Thank you. And finally, there's no change to our state fiscal recovery or SFR funds under ARPA. We have already obligated the full 115 million in those grants, capital projects funds. Depending on how much, or if any, some CUDs return in their capital projects funded construction grants. We will have somewhere in the realm of 5.3 up to 6 million available for the affordable long drop program. And we have up to 1.5 million reserved for admin and contingency. And we are currently charging some personnel time and some time for our contractual support for things like network construction inspections.
Okay, any questions? Thank you very much. That was a tremendous amount of work there put into presenting all that to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to legislative update. Item 8 on the agenda, which is Gwen.
Afternoon, folks. It's good to see everyone. I have 5 minutes, so I'll be quick. There wasn't a ton that has occurred since my update at your last meeting. But the update is that the legislature is sort of semi-adjourned at this point. They will be back for a veto session, which will not only cover vetoed legislation, but other legislation, specifically the one that they're discussing is education reform legislation. They will be back to doing that sort of work for at least a couple days, the 16th and the 17th of June. The governor signed the budget. You saw some of the budget stuff that Christina went through. That was signed into law on the 21st. So that's good to go, including everything again that Christina walked through. Since your last meeting, the staff from VCBB have testified in the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. As you'll recall, at your last meeting, we let you know that the legislature had been asking for updates on federal funding and wanting to be sort of in the know because, as you know, it's going to impact the match requirements and the funding available at the state level. And so the executive director and deputy testified on the digital equity grant, gave excellent testimony. The request from the committee was that moving forward through the summer and fall, if and when things change with funding from the feds, is that they be kept in the know. So they want to have an open line of communications to that committee. And my recommendation would be obviously to keep the appropriations committees also in the know, and Senate Finance, because they share this this subject matter in the Senate side. So the last thing is testimony that was given also by staff on not testimony, but following S-127, which was the housing bill. If you've paid any attention to any of the media, there has been a housing bill that is now headed to the governor for signature. It was flagged about a month and a half, 2 months ago from the deputy director about some language in there that needed to be strengthened around this program, which is similar to TIF, to increment financing for housing developments, with this new program called CHIP, which would be sort of like a smaller TIF program, and what sort of improvements and what sort of infrastructure would be included in the scope. And digital infrastructure and broadband infrastructure is included now. It was included, it was pulled out. Thankfully, we were following the bill and were able to lobby sort of behind the scenes to get it put back into the bill, which is fantastic because that aligns with what the current TIF program allows for infrastructure funding. So that's a big win. And like I said, that bill is headed to the governor for signature, and it appears that he will likely sign. So that's good news. So those are the two updates, the housing and the digital equity grant, and just a heads up that in addition to the open line of communication about the federal funding to the legislative committees, the issues that came up in H11 and H121, which was consumer protection and affordability, I think we can anticipate those two issues coming back again next year, and potentially other things. So things to keep on your radar in addition to anything else that you develop over the coming months. I hate to think about next year, but it's just around the corner.
Thank you, Gwen. That was very helpful and good work on keeping us in the loop on the TIF or whatever that was. Thank you. All the details. Any questions of Gwen? Okay, thank you. Let's now move on to item 9, which is the parking lot.
And that's Jenny.
That is me. Let's see. As you know, the termination of the DE grant on the 9th of May has required extensive refocusing for staff. Just on behalf of the entire team. So as a result, while the parking lot items are continued to be worked on, there hasn't been as much forward progression in those. So I was wondering if the board pleased if I could do a full update in July. I did put the slides in the packet and I'm happy to review them, but there really hasn't been a lot of change.
I'm happy to punt until July.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
guys have had a lot on your plate to focus on that curveball that came at you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's move now on to item 10, which is the Bikuda update. Rob.
Great, well, thank you all, and nice in person to see all of you. A couple of I actually haven't seen in person before, and I think it's probably okay, that's all right. A couple of you I haven't seen in person, so it's nice to be here, as Steven said. Always great when you host these meetings in person, to have the chance to come, even if we just shuffle in and out a couple of times. Thank you. Couple comments. One, just following up on Gwen's comments about legislative session. Not a lot of big things, but a couple of nice wins. This inclusion in the housing bill to consider broadband and digital infrastructure is definitely a win. And although the affordability and consumer protection activities didn't pass this year, there was a ton of testimony taken from a lot of parties in state and externally. And I think, from a Bikuda perspective, we just like to highlight that we really want this year to be the year that, to the extent it's possible, we get a proposal together that's ready to go in the fall. And what we mean by that is we need your help as the organization with staff that can reach across state government, to collect some of the pieces that we don't have access to in terms of how you construct a program, to work with us collaboratively. And frankly, I think all providers will be interested in this, not just CDs, so that next year we can hit the ground running with something that is actionable. To take the legislature. They collected a lot of great data this year about the need and the way programs work in other states. It's time for us to translate that into what we're going to do for affordability here in Vermont and have something concrete to propose. So we're here to work with you on that. Just a couple updates. Vermont was very well represented at the American Association of Public Broadband's inaugural conference and Hill Day last month. Krista and Ellie were both on a number of panels. And had the opportunity to go visit a number of people in the Congress, and not just Vermont legislators, but other important people from across the country. Great event organized by Gigi Sun, and it was great to see Vermont so prominently featured as leading the way in public broadband. The last thing I just wanted to mention is we're also watching BEAD as you are. And kind of talking to our colleagues in other states and looking forward to this upcoming guidance whenever it does come. Like Vermont, many states are moving forward with the plans that they had approved by the NTIA and getting as far as they can be before that guidance comes out. Of course, there's an added benefit of that if the guidance is great, they can move forward quickly. If the guidance is terrible, it's a stark contrast of how far they were and how much retreading they're going to have to do. And so we're very much on board with the idea that, move forward as far as we can, as deep into the process as we can. If that guidance doesn't come until July, well, let's get another month's worth of work done in moving forward. I think that's it for us. Obviously, we're very concerned about the digital equity grant as well, but regardless of kind of how that plays out over the next couple of months, we think affordability and consumer protection are really important. And we should not forget that that's another piece of this story, in addition to kind of the pieces that were in digital equity very much focused on this. So we're looking forward to continue to work with you, and I can take any questions, so we can just move on.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Any questions? Thank you for your update and thank you for all your work. Okay, let's now move on to item 11, which is public comment, final public comment.
Okay, so, the rules for public comment are, if you're in the room, raise your hand. If you're virtual, raise your hand. You'll be recognized in the order that your hand has been raised. And, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. So I see, Krista has her hand raised. And affects it. So go ahead, Krista.
I don't, actually. I was thinking about it. I'm still thinking about it.
Oh, Pam, sorry.
How are you doing that?
Okay, Pam, go ahead.
Thank you. I think a little less than a year ago, I invited you, Christine, and Rob to participate in a informational conversation with the Health Network about telehealth. So that the leadership team at the Health Network about telehealth, so that they would understand the different components of what needed to be done. And that work has progressed to the point where we have a committee that's headed up by Roz King from the Larner School of Medicine. I introduced her to Tricia Coates, and she got a planning grant from the Leahy Institute. And we put together a committee, and we've been meeting now for, I think, about 6 months. I've been involved with it. A couple of folks from one of my clients have been involved with it. And I know that Rob has been involved with it as well. And I guess I'm just raising my hand and saying, is that something that you want to have reports on about the work that we're doing with libraries in the rural parts of our state to be able to install telehealth using the great technology that the CUGs have installed?
I think that's an item for a future board meeting.
Okay.
I'll let you propose when to weave that in, Christine.
Yeah, I think that's actually a timely question since we're revamping the digital equity plan. So we can report that in the future.
I hate being boring, so I'm really glad it's timely. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and FX.
Yes, thank you. I'm a little concerned about the decision that was made earlier in the meeting about the $8 million, because it seems to me that is all now going into the pot that is associated with the BEAD program. And, frankly, our district was hoping that we would be able to see some of that added to our construction grant. Because anything we can do to avoid having to go back to borrowing additional money is going to, wind up paying off, in terms of our customers, not being saddled for more than a generation with the cost of paying off our municipal revenue bonds. And it just seems to me that there's a certain element of fairness here to EC Fiber that's being overlooked. And I would respectfully ask the board to either ask staff to come back with some proposals on this, or to take a meeting with the leadership of the district to talk about how the VCVB might be able to find a way forward to help us out more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Krista has her hand up.
Krista, go ahead.
So I just wanted to give you a couple of, I wanted to reiterate what Rob said around affordability. We feel really strongly that this is really going to be addressed in the next legislative season. And we, at NEKCV and at Vacuda want to be very much involved in figuring out a solution that works across the board, that doesn't segregate, CUD areas from non-CUD areas as the current legislation did. And I think it's most important that we do that hand in hand with the VCBB and making sure that we're aligned together and working together and finding something that works statewide. So I just wanted to reiterate that and support that. I also, related to Pam's comment on the telehealth, wanted to inform you that NEKCV did finally receive the Community Connect actual grant contract. So we're pretty psyched about that. So that's a $2.7 million grant in the Groton area. And part of that grant is for a community center. And that community center is on the base floor of a rural edge affordable housing complex. It's next door to the library. That community center will provide a location for people to access services when the library is not open. So it'll complement what's already there in terms of extending the hours that will be available to those without the ability to bring service to their own home. And it will have a variety of equipment that is sponsored by the grant and by our match. And in addition, to Pam's point around telehealth, it will have an area that's actually accessed from the outside that's locked, kind of like an ATM, but for telehealth, which we're really excited about doing. That can be accessed 24 hours a day through, key codes things and maintains privacy, and could be used for non-telehealth reasons as well, but we'll always prioritize telehealth. So I'm pretty excited about that. I wanted to share that. And then the last thing I wanted to share was that since the last meeting, we were approved by the FCC to be an RDOF Rural Digital Opportunity Fund recipient. And we did receive from the Public Utilities Commission our status as an eligible telecommunications carrier. And just a couple of weeks ago, we performed that closing with Consolidated Communications. So we will be taking on their Rural Digital Opportunity Fund obligations and the grants that are associated with that for the NEKCV district.
It's awesome. Wow. That's a big report.
It's good. Yeah.
Congratulations. Christine, perhaps Karen could do some press on the community center in Groton. As a person who went for 3 months without internet at her house, me, had to go to the library to download packets, do all the stuff that I do online. I had to go to the library. I just think that's a wildly successful application for those of us that are in a situation where you don't have internet. What do? You still have to function in our society, and those kiosk or kind of special areas to access for health or whatever are critical if you can't have internet at your house. So thank you, kudos.
Yep, we will do that.
Yeah, it's been a joy working with Pam's team.
Cool,
Glad to be a part of it.
good.
Spanning
Okay.
conversation.
Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any hands raised, can resume rest of the meeting.
All right. That brings us to item 12 on the agenda, which is next meeting confirmation. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 14th. This is vacation season, so it is important that we all check in, make sure we can be available. I do have a conflict for that meeting. I'll just put that out there now. I don't want to hold the meeting up, so assuming the rest of the board will be there, just give you a heads up that I will not for the 14th. Can everybody else make the 14th? Tag Dan, you're it.
I'd like to move. It's my first day back from vacation, so
You'll be all fresh.
not like it. Might be a little cloudy.
Just if I may, just to put it out there, if there could be NTIA guidance, there could be a reason to move it earlier, but to suggest 2 meetings in June, sorry.
Or in July.
Just the thought of like having it before the 4th of July weekend as opposed to after is another option to throw out there.
But that's if Or if there's major
structural changes or anything like that.
Let's hold our meeting for the 14th, and in the event there's an announcement, then we'll cross that bridge if it comes for a special meeting, but the 14th we should hold, just to keep everyone's calendars structured and in sync. Sarah, can you make the 14th?
Yes.
Excellent. Laura, can you make the 14th?
I can. We're not holding a June meeting.
No problem. I won't.
I hate her.
Siri, be quiet.
She'll tell you that she's nice.
That's funny.
We're not holding a June meeting. Is that right?
She asked.
I think this is the June meeting.
This is.
This is the
Yeah.
June meeting.
Right. Rob just suggested we might need to have another meeting. And my question was, we are not holding a date for the June meeting, just for the July meeting. Is that right?
Yes, if something comes up, staff will alert us that we need to have a special meeting, but at this point, we're not trying to schedule that. Okay, let's keep moving through the agenda. Let's now kick to item 13, which is our KPI quarterly reports.
Yeah, and at this point, we'll be going to executive session and not necessarily coming back out, so.
Right, the next two items are executive session. The next item 14 is a personnel or standard personnel item. Anyway, we will come out and then go back in,
We have to come out and go back in.
but
You want-
essentially this is the close of the public portion of the meeting.
If you won't have any questions for us that you wanna pull us in for or anything in the KPIs here.
I'm gonna punt to Christine.
No, we'll follow up. Yeah. we'll follow
Okay.
up Thursday.
I'm gonna make a motion.
Will be.
Can we move into executive session pursuant to one VSA section 313A6, which protects records exempt from access to the public records law, specifically one VSA section 317C9, which deals with confidential business records or information. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor of moving into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry 5-0.
Yeah, we'll include.
I think we need
staff.
somebody to get us on the elevator.
Thank you, everybody.
I got that.
We got it? Okay.
Good seeing you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the